Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Bruce Buchanan, co-founder and CEO of Rokt, to discuss providing solutions for e-commerce companies. Bruce, it's great to see you again. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thank you. Great to be back.
All right, and to begin, I want to start and refresh the audience with the Rokt founding story, because the founding idea came apart from your experience as a CEO of an airline company. So how did you go from leading an airline company to running an e-commerce technology business?
Yeah, interesting story. So I spent, prior to starting Rokt in 2012, I spent the previous 10 years building a business called Jetstar into what became the largest low fares airline in Asia Pacific, similar to Southwest as Jetstar for those in North America. And through that time, we realized that airlines, especially low-cost airlines, were one of the first direct-to-consumer businesses trying to sell directly to consumers and go around travel agencies. You know, it started sort of 40 or 50 years ago. And in that experience, we realized there was this magic moment where we're selling directly to our consumers and they're interacting and buying from us. And we realized that if we could personalize and make that checkout experience more relevant, we could double the profitability of the airline. And for a business with 14,000 employees and $10 billion of capital, the idea that a piece of technology could double the profitability of the business was very exciting. And then we sort of thought, well, if you could apply this on a global basis, the opportunity would be huge.
So what exactly is the problem you're trying to solve for e-commerce companies?
So the biggest problem, and where we really focus, is what we call the transaction moment, which is where consumers are actually in the cart, adding products and services and interacting with the brand. And that's a highly valuable moment. And lots of brands struggle with what products and what actions and what experiences to put in front of them, and how to get the trade-off between what I get out of this transaction and what I get in the next transaction, and what products and services are relevant to each individual customer. And how do you make a checkout experience when you've got a lot of third-party products and services like payment providers and shipping providers and different things going on in this transaction moment? How do I make it relevant to each consumer? And so we solve that and allow brands to optimize the value that they're getting out of every single transaction and bring relevant products and services and experiences to each individual customer.
So let's talk about closing your $80 million Series D investment round in October. Talk to me about how this funding round came about.
Yeah, it was a rather unusual story. We started, we were well funded as we closed the Series C actually late last year. So we weren't actually looking to do a funding round. And then we went into the middle of, or early days of COVID, and we had a number of employees actually reach out to us and say, look, it's great that Rokt's in a good position and it's said that all our jobs are safe, but we've got partners or family members or others that have lost their jobs and we're in a bit of financial distress. Is there a way that we can sell our shares? Because Rokt's a private company and it's not a thing that we can just log on and sell our shares via Nasdaq or some other market. And so we said, oh, that's an interesting problem. Let's reach out to our shareholders. And when we reached out to our shareholders, there was overwhelming desire to buy. And so that's what triggered off the conversation that ended up becoming much bigger than just the employee end of the spectrum. But it grew from an employee question where they were asking us to create some liquidity to help them out with some financial distress, and then grew into the sort of full $80 million round that you saw announced a week or two ago.
So what do you plan on doing with the new funding? How will it make you help provide better, smarter, faster solutions?
The primary focus for us is continued growth and investment in R&D. Our mission is how do we make e-commerce smarter, faster, and better, and how do we crack that problem of making every transaction moment relevant to each individual customer. And that involves a lot of R&D, a lot of integration, a lot of third-party products and services we're bringing into that moment. And so there's a massive investment in both growth and a massive investment in R&D. That's really our two key focuses. And ultimately, it's about achieving our mission.
Right, and you've raised over 160 million in funding to date. Tell us more about your future plans. What's next for Rokt?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different perspectives on that. I mean, we tend to think about growth in sort of 4 buckets. So we think about it in terms of verticals. So we're in 8 verticals now, like B2B, QSR, retail, subscription, a whole bunch of verticals that we serve. And so we always look at new verticals. How do we take our technology and apply it to automotive? How do we take it and apply it to healthcare and other verticals that we're not in? So there's one dimension there. There's another dimension on geographical reach as well, where we're very strong in North America. We grew up in Asia Pac, but we're looking at growth markets. We just opened Japan, opened a number of European markets. So continued geographic growth is another dimension for us. We're also looking on the third dimension for us, how do we take our product and take it down to smaller customers? We serve large enterprise clients at the moment. So 3,000 of the biggest e-commerce brands in the world use our technology. How do we make this technology available to small businesses using Shopify or BigCommerce or other retail e-commerce platforms? And so we've rolled out our first Shopify app, and we're going to continue to invest in that area as well. But our core focus is really about continued growth in our product, which is sort of the fourth pillar. How do we solve more problems in transaction? How do we bring more opportunities? How do we allow brands to experiment and test the waters in ways that they didn't think was possible before? And so a lot of what we're doing is how do we bring innovative payment options? How do we create micro checkout opportunity for brands in different environments? How do we make distributor commerce much less painful so they actually make the transaction occur directly in another e-commerce checkout? Things like that are where we're investing heavily on the product front.
Yeah, certainly a lot of growth since you first came on with me at MarketSite a couple of years ago. Let's talk about COVID-19 and the impact on e-commerce and Rokt specifically.
Well, it's been the start of COVID, like a lot of businesses, everything sort of stopped, and we were looking at it going, oh my God, our business declined 65% in a couple of weeks, and it was purely on the back of transactions just stopping. I mean, everyone got nervous and everything sort of ground to a halt. And then over the last sort of 6 months, we've seen our business rebound. But it's been a tale of haves and have-nots in our business because we serve industries like travel and entertainment. I mean, people have just stopped going to live events. We all understand why. Like, you're not going to see your sporting team. And so that all those businesses we work with in that area have just suffered massive drops in transactional activity. And on the flip side, we've got a lot of retailers that, a lot of their business, they've seen sort of a decade's worth of growth in sort of 4, 5, 6 weeks. And that's just because their e-commerce side has ballooned. So we're seeing this haves and have-nots in verticals. And overall, we're seeing a massive growth in our business through strong BD activity and businesses really trying to focus on improving their e-commerce experience now that's become so important for them. But we have seen industries and verticals that we serve really suffer, and that hasn't come back yet. And, so we're still continuing to invest and work with our travel clients, work with our entertainment and ticketing clients, and really lean into the clients that are trying to improve their e-commerce experience in retail, subscription, streaming, those sorts of areas.
But if you think about that longer term, consumers, their habits have certainly shifted. They understand how e-commerce works. I don't think we'll necessarily go back to the way things were then. But on the flip side, not only is it good for e-commerce, once things, we can go to live events and see entertainers and sports and travel, I for one can't wait. That's going to be good longer term as well, because once that switches back on and you have the e-commerce platforms, that's exciting.
That's what we believe in, and we're passionate believers in continuing to support our clients in those industries. We know people are going to want to go back to live events. We know people are going to want to see their favorite sporting team. So we're like you. We think that's exactly what's going to happen. So we're leaning into the industries that are growing fast, but also investing in how do we prepare for when those other industries come out of the COVID crisis and people do start returning to events. I mean, the good news for our business is because we're global, we can see what happens in markets like New Zealand and Australia, where we're seeing the first signs of some live events coming back on and consumers really leaning into that. So we know that there's pent-up demand and confident that those sectors will come back as well once COVID lessens off. All
right, Bruce, great to catch up with you as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.